Well, I wanted to start with one more thing before that. I just wanted to set the stage for this.
Okay.
Right? So we have to win, and I predicted that Pineda would blow it, and he would get out coached by Bruce Arena, and we would lose on the road in horrible fashion. So that was pretty much right. But set the stage, right? So our so-called, resurgence, if you will, the team was playing better according to everybody. But I wanted to point out, and I sent you and Carmen this before the game, right? That so in our last 10 games leading into this final match against New England, we had scored 16 goals. Okay, of those 16 goals, right? Purata scored
5, right?
5. Gutman
3
scored 3.
right?
Joseph Martinez scored 3. Almada scored 3.
3
Sosa scored 1. And Cisneros scored 1 10 games ago.
right?
Okay. So I think
That's the important thing with Cisneros. 10 games ago.
10 games. So he hadn't scored in the previous 9, despite starting. He wasn't starting the last few of them because he got replaced by Dom Dwyer. But he started most of the early part of that. Dom Dwyer started the end part of it. And the bottom line is neither one of them scored in all those starts. Okay, here's the 3 observations. So first of all, the defenders in the last 10 games had scored 10 of the 16 goals. I included Sosa. If you don't include him, it's 9 out of 16. But regardless,
He's a defensive player.
Yeah, he's a real defensive player. What do you think it says about the team when your defenders have scored 10 of the last 16 goals?
Well, it means that, you've got it all backwards. Is this a trick question?
No, it's an actual question.
It's
There's
actually,
I'm asking you. I don't really know the answer.
No, it means you have it all backwards, Dave, because it means that what we talked about, even through injuries, right? We've still had people who are healthy who are our attacking players.
Right.
And we've been talking about it all season on this podcast that Pineda has been too liberal with his not holding the back 6 back, right? So that there is a very strong cushion of defense with the back 4 and the 2 that are in front. And yeah, you're going to score if you don't play that way. So I think that's why we have seen goals, because, he likes to push people up. And yeah, I mean, over time, you are going to get some goals from a talented player like Gutman. Or Sosa, who knows how to rip a shot.
But even Gutman, actually, I think at least one of them, maybe 2 of them, came when he was playing one of the 3 center backs. So, all of our wide glory, right? All the wide play that we've had, they haven't scored.
Right.
It's double ironic, right? Because it's not just the defenders scoring. It's the defenders who don't go up very much who are scoring.
Well, I think I
missed one. I think Franco scored one in there.
I think you got to give Purata credit, too, for the 5 he had. I mean, I think 4 of those were at least with his head, if not all of them.
I think they're all with his head.
Right. Yeah. So, that's just smart by getting him up there. So you just got to give him credit for doing the right thing and getting his head on the ball and putting it in the net. So that's kudos to Purata for the 5, right? And maybe that's a little bit of an anomaly on why it's so high. But it does beg the question of why we're not scoring goals with the offensive talent that we have with the Almada, who's doing okay, but maybe not as well as he should. Certainly, Joseph Martinez, the numbers could be higher. We'll talk about that on why he hasn't been starting. Araujo, a real head scratcher. I think as the season went on, he's almost like frustrated at this point, obviously. And, he has been moved around a lot. So he's been asked to go into his not inverted position. And then all of a sudden you see him on the right side again. And Moreno's not in the game. It's not adding up on how you get the most from our attacking team. And I think this last game, Dave, when you look at the starting lineup, it speaks to maybe not exactly the question you're asking, but boy, have you seen anybody, when's the last time we saw Brooks Lennon or Amar Sedic score a goal? Or Cisneros, to your point? It was 10 games ago.
Sedic, 0.
Does Lennon have any? Maybe one, I'm guessing. I don't know.
No.
But he's certainly not a powerhouse. Araujo has been off.
Yeah.
But I think that's because of all the shifting around.
I don't think, a lot of people think he was going to score. He didn't really score even when he was at Lille. I don't think he's a score guy. He's a very offensive, creative guy, but
right.
And maybe in this league he could score some goals, but
right, if you play him like we've been saying, which is bomb down the left and whip in across, which he's fully capable of with, Joseph Martinez, Moreno, and Almada coming in. Goals all day. So the starting lineup against New England, Dave, was...
Wait, can we get one more second before we get to that?
Do it.
So the other two things I wanted to point out about this is that, second thing is Joseph Martinez, despite not starting any of those matches, really, maybe he started one or two in there, but basically despite not starting them at all, right, he has scored 3 goals, right? So he's outscored Cisneros, he's outscored Dom Dwyer. Those are the guys who've been starting all the matches, right? He's only coming in for the last few minutes, and he's equal scoring with Almada, right? And you brought up some interesting statistics, so maybe you tell people.
Yeah, so, what got me looking at the statistics, and it was funny, we totally agreed, and that's exactly what I was looking for, this little nugget of data on the 33 games and who is leading the league in goals, which is Mukhtar from Nashville. He's got like 23 goals, I think.
Yep.
Joseph Martinez has 9 goals.
9.
Mukhtar has double the minutes of Joseph Martinez.
Right.
Okay. So now I'll just, what's also happened on Twitter with all the people talking about it is like, in me saying he should have started all this time.
Yep.
And particularly start when you see Cisneros and Dom Dwyer's goals not happening. It's not that, I'm okay with him at that part of the season. That mid part when Joseph was just getting back from injury, Cisneros had to be knocked off his pedestal a little bit, but you know what? He didn't do anything to stay on that pedestal. And at some point, the rice and chicken's going to flip. And it did, and rightfully so. When you go 6 games of a guy who's younger than the star player in the team not scoring goals, this is damning to Pineda, in my opinion, and it's why there was that conflict. But that data talks to what probably could have happened. He could have had probably 6 or 7 goals in that time frame.
Sure.
And for all the people out there who say,
even with as terrible as we were offensively,
but
we didn't score a lot of goals.
But the Twitter argument out there was that he can't go 90 anymore, and I call BS on that. If we play the right way, it's not like even in that game where he came in the 54th minute against New England, it wasn't like he's running around. I mean, that's not his style of play, particularly with the talent we've talked about we have on this team. He can be that poacher. He can be a pure number 9. Doesn't mean he doesn't need to work back sometimes, but it's not like he needs to be like the marathon guy in the field.
I think it's interesting. There are some statistics about, Martinez maybe needs to go. And then they were like, okay, he hasn't, he's like almost like in the bottom 10% in pressing of all forwards. But I'm like, he's been in the bottom 10% of pressing all forwards even when we won the MLS title in 2018, right? So what is the difference?
And I want to say, because I was, very questioning of Joseph Martinez's future as a soccer player at the beginning of the season, right? And, I think is where I got off of that, right, is he was scoring out of the gates when he had minutes, and then he had the light fix on his knee and was out for what, like a month? And, and by all accounts, right, it was like a pretty minimal surgery, and supposedly he was able to get back pretty quickly. And that's everything Joseph has said, too, on his recovery. Like, he was, like, ready to go. And it's okay to be conservative, like 1 or 2 games. But then if the player is like, hey, dude, I'm ready to go, and he's your guy, and this is his window, he might have, like, 1 or 2, like, all-star type of seasons left in him. Why not let the guy play, Dave? Like, and I've busted on him early in the season. Like, maybe he's lost a step, maybe he doesn't have it. But then you look at the data, right? And Pineda is supposed to be a data-driven type of coach. It was clear as day that you should at least give him a chance to prove that he can do it. And if not, then give him 3 games and be like, hey, man, I gave you the chance.
I just don't see how Pineda is a data-driven coach with some of his decisions.
No, but you're right. But I think you're the one who's saying, from his Seattle
he was supposed to be
heritage, he was supposed to be, right? I'm just saying that. Stuff, but clearly not. I mean, when I looked at that spreadsheet of the data I pulled, I was just shocked.
Yeah, I think he's a coach who, I mean, one thing that has revealed is that as the season went on, and this happens when teams are losing, but he kind of is definitely holding grudges against people.
Yeah.
Right. He's very stubborn, not in a stubborn, even just in a tactic way. Like, they're players who are, I mean, we always go back to Moreno, right? So, okay, maybe Martinez is controversial because Arroz Campoyo and all his other, outbursts, but nobody said anything like that about Moreno. And yet he was the leading player of minutes and the leading scorer for the first third of the season.
Yep.
And in the last third of the season, he basically didn't play at all. So what happened?
We don't. Yeah, and no one seems to know. So yeah, I do think. Yeah, I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire. He's holding grudges. He's got very bullish opinions on whether the person's practicing hard, whether they have the right attitude, or there's something else that's a factor. But certainly not enough of a factor for Moreno to be not on the bench, right, and not being subbed in, and that's what really gets me, like even in this last New England game, just, I mean, so heated.